Hakadosh Boker Tov, Masechet Yevamot Daf Yud 12a1. Says the Gemara, Amalei. So now we're trying to understand what it to answer up the safek, the doubt of Rabbi Ami to Rabbi Yochanan. Remember that the doubt was, do we come and say that for the Machzir Grushato Misheniset, that the second that he gets married to the wife again after she got married to somebody else, do we say that there for sure it's prohibited to do Yibum, and the doubt is by the tzara, by the co-wife? Or do we say the opposite? By the co-wife, it's pashut that she's permitted to do the Yibum and everything else, but by the woman, Machzir Grushato Misheniset, there it's a question, was do we do a kavachomer in a place of mitzvah or not? So we say, Tenitua, we already learned it in the Mishnah. The Mishnah says, if one of the women were kasher and one of them women psulot, if he wants to do chalitza, he has to do chalitza to the psula. If he wants to do yibum, yabem kshera. My kshera or my psula. What is the kasher? What is the pasul? You're going to tell me that kasher means kasher to the entire world, to other people, and psula means pasul to the entire world, to other people. So given the lidei, since according to for this person, he's fitting, my left to me, what do I care? Meaning, what is the difference whether you're going to do the chalitza or the yibum to who? As long as they're fitting to this husband, meaning like to the brother, of the husband, what do I care? Rather, kshera le, upsula psula le. Umaynihu, machzir grushato. No, when it means kasher, it means kasher to him or pasul to him is machzir grushato. Bektani, we already learned, that means if he wants to do yibum, he could only do yibum to the co-wife, which that's the kshera, right? That's not to the woman, which was machzir grushato, which is the psula. So answers the Gemara, that's not a proof. No. Why? Kshera le'alma. Upsula le'alma. We're going back. No, really when it means kasher, it's kasher to the entire world. Pasul to the entire world. Now, since you said, what's the nafkamina? Should Rav Yosef, it's like Rav Yosef. Rav Yosef, it says Rav Yosef, Rabbi taught, don't pour out water that you have in a pit if people need it. And that's how we already explained that basically, if right now they would do chalitza to the tzara, you would disqualify now her, the co-wife, to be coming to get married to a kohen. So if they do chalitza to the machzir grushato, so then it's good. So therefore, and if you're doing yibum, make sure that you do yibum to the kshira. Fine. Tashema. We're going to try to bring another proof to this pasuk, to this psak. Hamachzir grushato sheniset. Right? And somebody's going to take back the wife, right? That he already divorced, and then she got married to somebody else, and then she came back to him. He married her again. So here it says in a Braita Mefurash, both of them have to do chalitza. So ask the Gemara, do you really think it's hivet tzarata? They both have to do chalitza. Ela ema, but rather you have to say you're right. Or he, or tzarata. Or she, or her tzara have to do chalitza. But this is a proof that they both have to do chalitza. There's no yibum. Answers the Gemara, we already answered this, just like we said before. There's mamash chazara. Tari tzachir, we answered. He choletzet, you have to split it up. The machzir grushato misheni said she does chalitza, but tzarata choletzet o midyamemet. She does either chalitza or yibum. Okay, fine. Now we're going back to tzarat sota and tzarat machzir grushato, right? That means that we finished tzarat sota and tzarat machzir grushato. Now we're going to another case, which is prohibiting her tzara. Amar Rav Lili bar Mamal, Amar Mor Ukva Mar Shmuel. Says Rav Lili bar Mamal, and the name Mor Ukva Mar Shmuel. Tzarat mema'enet asura. Okay, the tzara mema'enet is going to be prohibited. Remember, a mema'enet is a yitoma ktana, an orphaness, right? A woman, a girl that that basically she gets out of it through miyun, which means that if a father gets a daughter married, she will need a get and everything. Why? Because it's a viable marriage midoraita. But if it's going to be, even though she's a ktana, even though she's a minor, but if it's going to be that the father dies, so the mother or the brother could get her married off, which is a ktana, but then she could do miyun. And miyuns, because what is miyun? She renounces the marriage, and that she could only do because it's the rabbanan. Meaning, since the marriage was only the rabbanan, when she becomes bat mitzvah, she could just denounce, I don't want to be married, and that's it. And that's it. The entire marriage falls out of the table, right? It completely goes out. Okay, so now it says over here like this: the tzara ava mema'enet, she's prohibited, right? What does that mean? So it says here like this: if the ktana did not do miyun to the bala and to her husband, and then the husband dies without children, and she falls in front of Yibum to the brother Midrabanan, right? So then, as long as she's still a Ktana, she could still do the Miyun to the Yibum, and therefore she could be poter, right, from the Zikata Yibum. Now, even though, right, she's not married to the Yavam, nevertheless, she could be Ma'en in the Zikah also between her and the Yavam. Okay, therefore she could do it retroactively, which is something incredible, which means not only is she doing Miyun to her husband, she could do Miyun to the brother, to the Yibum as well. Because as long as the Yibum was still not done, she does the Miyun lemafrea retroactively, and now she was like never married to her husband. Okay, that's what she's able to do. So now the Gemara is talking about that one of them was a Yitomak Tanah, so therefore it's Dirabanan. The person dies without children, and now both the wives, they fall in front of the brother. Now, since this woman, right, is only a Din Dirabanan, it's also going to do Yibum, it's only Dirabanan. So therefore, if the Tanah does Miyun, she takes away the Zikah, and therefore Tzarat Mema'enet, which is basically the co-wife, the other woman that she was a Gdolah, she's a Surah to do Yibum Dirabanan. Okay, that's what Tzarat Mema'enet is. Okay, so she's not allowed to do Yibum Dirabanan. So says the Gemara, Leman, who is the Tzarat Mema'enet Surah Lityabem? Ilay Malachin, if it's going to be for the brothers, so you're going to say 1 second, Hashta Yigufa Sharia, if this Ktana is permitted to get married to the brothers, according to Shmuel, Tamar Shmuel, Miyana Bazeh Muteret Bazeh, which means Miyana Bazeh, what happens if she does Miyun to one, she's still permitted to the other ones. So Tzaratami Bayas, then what's the doubt about the, which means like this, she could do Miyun that she doesn't want to do Yibum to brother A, but she's still permitted to brother B. Or she could do to brother B and she's still permitted to brother A or C. So she's allowed to do that. So then Tzarata, obviously her co-wife is permitted to all the other brothers, but rather Lididei, to the same Yavam that she did Yibum. Meaning once she did the Miyun to that brother, so now says the Gemara, right, to that same brother, the Memayenet is a surah to that Yibum, and she's permitted to the other brothers. So Shmuel is teaching us that not only the Memayenet is a surah to Yavam, but also Tzarata is a surah to Yavam. Right, one more time. You have Reuven, Shimon, Levi, Yehuda, you've got a whole bunch of brothers. Right, Reuven gets married to Rachel and Leah. Now, Rachel was a Ktana. So therefore what happens is, Reuven dies. Now, remember that she could have done Miyun when the husband was alive, and she completely gets rid of the marriage. Now the husband dies, she could do Yibum, Miyun to, let's say, Shimon. Even if she does Miyun to Shimon, she doesn't want to get married to Shimon, she could still get married to Levi and Yehuda. Or she could do Miyun to Levi, she's still permitted in Shimon and Yehuda. She could do Yehuda and she's still permitted in Shimon and Levi. Now the Gemara is saying, according to Shmuel, not only is she now prohibited to do Yibum to that brother that she just did Miyun to, her co-wife cannot do Yibum to that brother as well. That means the second that she did the Miyun to that one brother, her co-wife is also prohibited to that one brother. Okay, that's what's saying. What's the difference? Why is she permitted to the other brothers? For sure, it's because there was no maaseh of miyun done for the other brothers, and the only miyun was done for one brother. So tzara nami lo avda b'maaseh. Tzara, there was no maaseh of miyun for her, right? For any of them. So therefore, the tzara should be muteret yabem to everybody. Meaning, I understand the miyun to one brother. Okay, so now she doesn't do yibum to this brother, but the tzara, there's no miyun for her. So therefore, if there's no miyun for her, the tzara should be permitted to get married to everybody, even that yavam that this Tana did miyun to. So answers the Gemara, Gezerah mishum tzara bito memayenet. No, it's a gezerah because of tzarat bito, which is memayenet, which means that we don't want to permit a tzara, even in the case of memayenet, is the bito of the yavam, the daughter. So says the Gemara, the tzarot bito memayenet miyasira, is it even prohibited? But now we learned in the Mishnah Bab, vekulan in all the cases, imetu o miyanu, if they died or they did miyun or they got divorced. Tzarot mutarot, their tzara is permitted to do yibum. So the miyanu b'man, who did they do miyun to? Ilema the miyanu b'baal, if you're going to say that the husband is still alive, so then that's a grusha, right? Which means that that's considered like a grusha that was afterwards. So elalav rather, it had to be miyun by a yavam. and still we said tzarata is muteret. So therefore, you see from here, right, that it's included bito. Because remember, one of the mishnah was bito. So therefore, tzarat bito, which is mimayenet, is exactly malacha. Okay? So he says, no, le'olam ba'al, really be'emet. We're talking about in a case where she did miyun to the husband when he was still alive. Utre gavne girushin, and it's two different cases of girushin, which means that if the yitomah did miyun from the husband for the death, tzarata is permitted to do yibum. But if he did not do miyun during the lifetime of the death of the person, and only afterwards she did yibum, miyun to the yavam, tzarata is going to be prohibited. So ask the Gemara, what's the difference? Umayshna kimiyana b'bal d'miyakra nisuin kimiyana b'yavam nami nisuin kamay kaka. Says, what's the difference? When the first husband is still alive, and she does miyun, what does it do? It uproots the original kiddushin, correct? It uproots everything. So too now, when the husband dies and she's waiting for the yavam, and she does miyun to the yavam, it's also uprooting the original kiddushin. So what's the difference then? At the end of the day, it's the exact same thing. So answers the Gemara, Nishum detani Remi Bari Cheskel, because we learned in Remi Bari Cheskel, Tani Remi Bari Cheskel, Miyana Baba'al Muteret La'aviv. If she right now comes and she does miyun to the husband, when the husband's still alive, she's permitted to get married to the father of the husband. And she's not prohibited because she's becoming a kala, the daughter-in-law. Meaning that Kilu, there was never a marriage. That means even though this young girl was married to the son, she does miyun, now all of a sudden she's getting married to her father-in-law because she's not a father-in-law. She was never married to the son. So it's not a daughter-in-law. By Yavam, if she does miyun to the Yavam, asura le'aviv. She's prohibited to the father of the husband. Right? That means even though in here we do say that it goes retroactively, she's prohibited. Why? Because it looks like Kiru that she was married to the husband. So Almas, you see from here, Mishat Nefila, the second that she falls to do Yibum, Niret Kekalato, it looks like now it's a daughter-in-law. Meaning beforehand it was never a daughter-in-law. Once she falls Yibum, now it looks like she becomes a daughter-in-law. Hachanami, so to here, Mishat Nefila, the second that she has to do Yibum, Niret Ketzara Bito, it looks like it's Tzara Bito, and therefore it's going to, the Tzara will be prohibited. Okay? Nekuda. Now the Gemara is going to talk about another Tzara, which is Oseret. Okay? Amar Ravasi says, Tzarat Ailonit Asura. Tzarat Ailonit is also going to be Asura to do evil. Shneimar says in the Pasuk, Vaya Bechol Asher Teled, only that could give birth. Tzarat Ailonit Sheni Yoledet. Remember that here, if we're talking about an Ailonit does not give birth. Okay? So it says over here, so since the Ailonit is Surah from Yibum, so she's Asura on the Yavam with Eshet Ach. So therefore she's Tzarat Elva. So since she's Tzarat Elva, so therefore the Tzara is also prohibited to do Yibum. And now the Gemara is going to ask the following question. Mativ Rav Sheshat. Rav Sheshat is going to ask the following question. I'm sharing my screen. Okay? So Mativ Rav Sheshat. Rav Sheshat comes and he asks the following question. Okay? Shlosha achim nesuin l'shalosh nashim nochriyot. You have three brothers that are married to three women which are not sisters. Nochriyot means strangers to each other. So here you have Reuven, Shimon, Levi, three brothers. They're married to three different wives. Sarah, Miriam, and Sila. Okay? Umet echamen. So let's say now Reuven dies. Okay, without children. So now Sarah goes in front of these two for Ibum Vasaba Achashani. So Shimon comes and he does Ma'amar. Okay, Ma'amar is Kiddushin Shel Yavam B'Yivimto. That's called Ma'amar. Okay, that means he does Kiddushin. Okay, because he says Mina Torah, there's no mashmal to Masechet Kiddushin. So therefore the Zikah is done by itself. Because the second that basically that the brother dies, he automatically becomes connected to them. So the Chachamim they said if Yavam does Ma'amar, which is basically Masechet Kiddushin, the Kiddushin is Chal. So the Yevama is now considered Midrabanan like his wife. Okay, so that's called Ma'amar, which means one more time, right? The second that, so Shimon does Ma'amar to Sarah. Ma'amar is like a Kiddushin Drabanan, whether it's through kesef or shtar, money or a document, whether it's a ring or whatever it is, but usually it has to be done Yibum. He didn't do Yibum yet. He did Ma'amar, which is Drabanan. Okay? Now what happens now is that all of a sudden, Shimon also dies. Okay? So now you have two wives. You have the first wife, which is Sarah, which was Dar Ma'amar to Shimon, plus the wife of Shimon, which is Miriam. They're falling in front of now Levi. You see the picture? Reuven dies, Sarah should go to Shimon. But Shimon did not do Yibum exactly, he only did Ma'amar. Then Shimon dies. Again, everyone's dying without children here. So now Sarah, which she's the wife of Reuven that was done in Ma'amar to Shimon, and Miriam fall in front of Levi. So they're only allowed to do Chalitza and not Yibum. Right? Why? Because Zikat Sarah is coming because of the two brothers. Right? Which means that as long as there was no Yibum done, the Sarah, she's coming also because of the wife of Reuven, not only the wife of Shimon. So because of that, this Sarah is playing like a double role. It's like also from Reuven and also from Shimon, because Mina Torah, she's coming from Reuven, and Midrabanan, she's coming from Shimon. So because of that, she's Asura, they do Chalitza, not Ibum. Shneimar says in the Pasuk, Keshu achim yachtav umet achad mehem, Yevamo yevo alea, mi sheyesh alea zikat yavam echad, velo zikat shnei yavimim. Only if she has a zikat yavam of one wife and not two wives. So we learned on it, Rabbi Yosef says, Zoi tzarat eshet ach me'av. This is a tzarat eshet ach from the father. Sheyisu nefila garamla, that she became like an erva. Shelo matzinu b'chol Torah kula kol. We never found this. Zohi, this case, lemiute mai, lav lemiute tzarat elonit desharia. Doesn't this come to exclude the tzarat elonit that she's permitted to do yibum? So therefore, we just came and we just said that tzarat elonit is ptura from yibum, correct? Because since the elonit is considered an erva, so to the tzara is tzarat erva, that she's ptura from yibum. And here we're coming to say that she should be prohibited. We should be permitted the tzarat elonit. Okay? So he comes and he says, we didn't find any mekor in the Torah to prohibit such a woman that she has a zikah to two Yevamas, like to two Yevams, right? It was only Yisur de Rabbanan. Fine. So answers the Gemara, lo lemiute. This comes to exclude. Yeah, this comes to exclude. Which case? This comes to exclude tzarat elonit, right? The asira, that she's going to be prohibited to do yibum. Umay zohi. So what does it mean zohi? Zohi the yisur nefila garam la tzarata baya chalitza. This is a case where because the Yevama has a double obligation, she has the obligation mitzad Reuven and also mitzad Shimon. So therefore, yisur nefila garam la shetzarata baya chalitza, that she needs to do chalitza. Ailonit afilu chalitza lo. She doesn't even do a chalitza. My time, what's the reasoning? Ha doraita, because Ailonit is a surah to the Yavam doraita. The ha, and this woman is only Rabbanan, which means like this. This Sarah, she was prohibited to Levi because she's got two zikot. She's got two obligations. She had an obligation to do Yibum because of her first husband, Reuven. And she has an obligation, Midrabbanan, Yibum, because of the second husband. Because the second husband Shimon did Ma'amar, which means that he did Kiddushin. So since it's a zikah, two obligations, we went and we learned out that it's technically speaking, you can't do Yibum. You can only do Chalitza. So the Gemara says, yeah, but that's only Midrabbanan, that's not Doraita. Because Midoraita, she was only from Reuven. There was nothing yet with Shimon. So therefore, and in the other case, Sarat Elonit is Doraita. So you cannot compare both cases. Okay? Tanan, we learned in the Mishnah, the Kulan, all the 15 women, Imetu, if they died, or they did mute, Onit Karshu, or they got divorced, or Elonit, or one of them became an Elonit, Sarotem, Mutarot, their Sarot are permitted to do Yibum. So it's Mefurash in the Mishnah that Sarat Elonit is permitted to do Yibum, not a sur to do Yibum. You wanted to say that Sarat Elonit is a sur because just like the Elonit, right, there's no marriage, so therefore, and she's considered an Erva, so therefore the Sarat Elonit is Sarat Erva, so she's permitted even without Yibum. Here it says Mefurash that they're permitted to do Yibum. So says the Gemara, Lakashia, it's not a question. Can be Kirba, there can be Shloi Kirba. The case where we were talking about was that the husband knew she was an Ailonit when he got married to her. And therefore the Kiddushin was not a mistake. And therefore the Ailonit was his wife. And then when she dies, when he died, so she goes to do Yibum in front of the brothers, but Sarata. So since she's Ptura from Yibum, so therefore, right, because she's Asura because of Eshetach, so she's going to prohibit the brothers. But here we're talking about where the husband never knew she was an Ailonit, right? And therefore the Kiddushin was a mistake. So if the Kiddushin was a mistake, she was never married. Remember, an Ailonit, even if Ailonit, there's a few different simanim. She doesn't have the top part like a woman, the chest area, right? Even the bottom part, she doesn't have hairs growing, right? Her voice is hoarse. However, though, like it's like not the horse, her voice is like manly. But another thing is that you never know. We don't confirm an Ailonit until she's 20 years old. Because if she's 20 years old and then she doesn't have all these simanim, so then we call her an Ailonit. So therefore, what we're trying to say now is very, very simple. What's going on now is that we are actually saying that if right now he never knew she was an Ailonit, let's say he got married to her when she was 15, 16, whatever it is, 18, he dies. So now what happens is that was a mekach talut from the beginning. So since it was a mekach talut from the beginning, he was never married to her. So if he was never married to her, so for what happened, right? Because he didn't know about it. So therefore what happened? So for the tzarata is permitted to do yibum. Why? Because there was no other marriage. There's only one marriage. Right? Now, if he already knew about it beforehand, let's say he got married to her at the age of 22 and he already knew she was an Ailonit. So there's no mekach talut. It was a good marriage. Since it was a good marriage, when he dies, she's not allowed to get married to the Yavam, because the Yavam is only in order to have children. She cannot have children. So she's Eshet Ach. So since she's prohibited to the Yavam, she prohibits Sarata as well. You could also deduce this from the Mishnah when it says Nimtseu Ailonit. Veloktani Shayu Ailonit. That they were found to be an Ailonit, not that they were already Ailonit. So Ramina comes to teach you that the husband never knew she was an Ailonit. So since it was a mekach taut, that's why. Amar Rava. Rava comes and he says, Yudbet Amubet. Hilchata, what's the halacha? Tzarat Ailonit muteret. Tzarat Ailonit is going to be permitted. Okay, va'afilu ikilba, even if he didn't know about her beforehand, still going to be muteret. Va'afilu tzarat bito Ailonit, even if it's going to be tzarat bito Ailonit, it's going to be permitted. Yalahadik tani nimtseu, nimtseu. It says no, tani shayu. You have to change the word. It doesn't say that they were found to be Ailonit. They were Ailonit. That means you already knew in the past that they were Ailonit. Kiata Ravin, when Ravin came, Amar Rabbi Yochanan, he said to Rabbi Yochanan, so therefore the Gemara now brings a psak to do the three cases that we just spoke about. Tzarat memayenet, tzarat ailonit, and tzarat machzik grushato, all of them are permitted to do yibum. Okay, now that we finished with these, we're going to now go to another inyan, which also had to do with the Mishnah. Tani Rav Bevai kamed Rav Nachman, taught Rav Bevai in front of Rav Nachman. Shalosh nashim mishamshot b'mo. This is a very interesting halacha. This halacha is that 3 women are permitted to have relations with a moch. A moch was like a cotton or whatever that they used to put inside during relations, right? In order that she should not become pregnant, which is basically contraceptives. So, and by the way, this is where they learned the halachot of contraceptives. So there's 3 women that are allowed to use contraceptives, okay, in order that they shouldn't become pregnant. So here it actually says in the footnote, Hotzad zera. If a person is going to take out zera not in the body of the woman, it's considered a shchatat zera, which is an isur chamur, and therefore it's a sur for an isha b'derech to put a moch during the time of tashmish, because by doing that, the zera, the semen, goes into the moch and doesn't go inside of the body. So it's like the motzi zera vatala. Okay, so he's going to say here, right? So therefore, that's why we have to find out that there's going to be 3 women that are permitted to do this. Number 1, a kitana, right? A minor, a young girl, under bat mitzvah. Number 2, right? A meuberet, a woman that's already pregnant, so she could do that. And menika. We're going to explain one by one. Kitana, shema titaber, v'shema tamut. Maybe she's going to become pregnant and she'll die. Because since she's so young, if she's going to become pregnant when she's under 12, she could die from pregnancy. So because of that, misham shobamo. And that's the reason why, if you remember, that by Yitzchak, you had to wait 20 years. Because they say that Rivka was a ketana, 3 years old. So therefore she had to wait until she was 13 years old, whatever, 12, 13. And then, right, he had to wait another 10 years. And only when it was 20 years afterwards, then they started saying what's going on or whatever it is. And then she became pregnant. Okay? That's why he was only 60, right, at the time. Okay, because he was 40 at the time of marriage and only 60 at the time of the birth of Yaakov and Esav. Meuberet. Why, when a woman's pregnant, does she use a moch? Shema ta'aseu bara sandal. Because maybe she's going to have another pregnancy, meaning that maybe she could become pregnant again, and the second child will come and it would destroy the first child. Okay? Sandal, that's what we're talking about. Okay? So he comes and he says over here like this. Here it says in the footnote that there's a klal in the Gemara Masechet Nida that ena isha chozeret umitaberet, which means a woman that's already pregnant will not become pregnant again. Okay, but he says maybe that only means she cannot become pregnant again to have a viable child, but she could become pregnant again, right? In the fact of that maybe one will destroy the other, meaning it'll become, right? So that's one. A third case, menika, she's feeding. Why? Shema tigmol benav yamut. Because if she becomes pregnant, the milk goes off. And by the way, this is actually very common nowadays. Many times women that they're pregnant, that they're feeding, all of a sudden they thought that all of a sudden she's pregnant. And she doesn't understand why. All of a sudden the baby doesn't like any more the milk or this or that. And all of a sudden, there's whole, she doesn't understand what's going on. What is it? What is it that she's pregnant? And she is pregnant. So what happens is that maybe she's going to have to stop feeding and then the child is going to die. Remember that in the olden days, it's not like nowadays that there's materna and all these, formula and all these things. In the olden days, they had to mash, and even if they couldn't do it, they had to get a wet nurse. A wet nurse was very expensive also. So imagine, it wasn't simple. Okay? What is a ktana? We're talking about from 11 to 12. But less than this and more than this, she could have regular relations. These are the words of Rabbi Meir, right? He says, right? Why? Because before 11, she can never become pregnant, and after 12, it's not a sakana. So that means that according to Rabbi Meir, from 11 to 12 is when she has the contraceptives. Because before 11, for sure, she won't become pregnant. And after 12, it's not a sakana. It's not a danger if she becomes pregnant. Except for she doesn't do it anymore. Chachamim say no. Aktana מעוברת ומניקה, she should also always have relations like normal. ומן השמיים ינחמו. מן השמיים, they should have mercy on them. Don't worry about it. משום שנאמר, but it says in the pasuk, shomer petaim Hashem, that Hashem should watch over, right, the fools. What does that mean, the fools? It means that even if they're not going to do smart things, Hashem watches over them. So מן השמיים ינחמו. So says the Gemara, the fact that you said by a ktana that maybe she's going to become pregnant and she's going to die, so it could come that there's a ktana that she could become pregnant and she won't die. In Ken, if so, matzino we found that the mother-in-law could do miyun, right? And for example, because she was born as a ktana, that means you could have a woman, right, that she's a ktana, she gives birth to a child, right? And then what happens is that she does miyun. Utnana we learned, right? You cannot find such a case. So it could be that the ktana would give birth, she would still live, and therefore you could find out this ktana would be the mother-in-law, right? Of right emishto, and she could still do miyun when she's a ktana. So therefore, a person that comes and gets married to a yitoma ktana, right? And he could be the mother-in-law. That means the mother-in-law, right? Right? One more time. Hold on a second. So one more time. So basically, the case is very, very simple. The case is like this. You have a ktana. She was married off by her mother or brother to this guy. Let's say to Reuven. What happens is Reuven gets her pregnant, right? And she gives birth at the age of 11. Because remember, before then she cannot give birth. But it's really 11 and 12. She could give birth, but it's a second, but she could still live. So what happens is she gave birth. Now the husband, Reuven, gets this ktana, this baby, married off, and that's a kiddushin d'oraita, to Shimon. Yeah, somebody else. And what happens is that the wife, right, she could now do miyun still until 12 years old. So she does miyun. So now it comes out that this wife that she does miyun, she is the mother-in-law of this Shimon, and she could still do miyun to her husband. So that's what the Gemara says. We said in our Mishnah, you cannot find chamoto or em chamoto, right? Or the mother of the chamif, that they were found Ailonit or Mianu. I just found the case of Mianu. Right? I just found the case of Mianu, and it's the mother-in-law. So I answer the Gemara, Eima, but rather you have to change the Lashon of the Braita. Shema titaber v'tamut. Right? Because maybe if she's going to get pregnant, she'll die. No, not Shema titaber. Maybe she's going to become pregnant with tamut, not Shema titaber v'shema tamut. It's Shema titaber v'tamut, and she for sure will die. Okay? It's not Shema, maybe. It's if she becomes pregnant, for sure she will die, right? In such a case. The Amar Rabba bar Levi, Gevul yeshla. She has a gvul. Kodem hazman hazeh, before this time, ena mitaber kolika. She doesn't get pregnant at all. Toch hazman hazeh, during the 12th year, he meta v'ubara meta, but they both die. She and the fetus. La'achar hazman hazeh, after this time, he chaya, she lives, v'ubara chay. and also the child could also live. So ask the Gemara, any is it so? Fatani Rabbi Bar Shmuel. Rabbi Bar Shmuel taught. It's impossible, right? Because the Ketana cannot give birth. So if so, right? So how could you tell me now that it says Shekvar Yaldu because they already gave birth, right? So Ela Leolam, or rather you're right, you have to change it back. Shema Titaber v'Shema Tamu. Maybe she's gonna become pregnant, maybe she's gonna die. But you have the question then. If Be'emet this could happen, and it did happen, so then you could find a case of the mother-in-law, which is miyun. And you just said that you can't find that. So Rav Safra says, Banim harem kesimanim. If a woman would give birth, so then that's a siman that she's already old. So therefore, it's like she's already older, and then she can't do miyun anymore. Meaning the second that she gives birth, she cannot do miyun. Yeah, because it's already like a siman that she's already a big woman. She's a woman, even though she's not at the age, but it's already there. The amre, and some people say banim are not like the same as simanim. They are better than simanim. Because remember, what are the simanim? That she has 2 pubic hairs, right? But that, right, or there's also to do with the chest area also, right? There's 2 different simanim by women, right? Usually, obviously, the hair is much stronger. But he's saying over here, the children are even a better siman than the simanim. Okay, mine have come what's the nafkamina? Tafilu Rabbi Yehuda damar, but even according to Rabbi Yehuda, that he says, ad shir be'ashachor, that a yitoma that even brings 2 hairs, she could still do miyun until you have more black area because of the hairs than the not covered area, which means that place has to become darkened like black because of the hairs, right? If she has children, he is going to be modeh that what? That she cannot do miyun anymore. Okay?